I'm not sure I will elaborate that some more, but not because yeah. The point of view that I have, and if you don't know that, you are in trouble. My point of view is that nature is described by Feynman diagrams. And on top of it, all states such as the hydrogen atom and unstable particle, through partial formation can be understood also in terms of Feynman diagrams. Now that's sort of a limited view. And people who do quantum chromodynamics, non-perturbatives, sometimes it gets more difficult. On the other hand, some things like asymptotic freedom have resulted in the fact that some pieces of quantum chromodynamics can be understood by going to high energy where then perturbations see reality. So Feynman rules are usually formulated in momentum space. We talk about particles on this or that momentum colliding with another particle. And that's my universe. I live in that one. That's what this nature is about. Now, the experiments we agree very well with this idea. There's the lab data, most of which are in fact practically all perturbations theory. We agree very, very well. And then there is the Higgs sector, which we know very little about, and here are the three cases that we were talking about. Now, about the Higgs, what is special about the Higgs particle? It has to have zero spin, we'll go into that later. And then the Higgs has certain very particular properties to which we come later to. Then I also noticed already at this point, although I haven't come to the standard model, I wish to already notice at this time, while nature could have given particles a mass like the electron, it could have a mass of itself, and in addition, a mass due to interaction with the Higgs system. It turns out that the mass that the electron has of itself is zero, and that's not only for the electron, that's for all quarks and electrons. And so it's extremely remarkable that all masses that we know of seem to come from the Higgs system. And this gives you the first flavor of perhaps that the Higgs is related to the same thing that gravity relates to. Now, where do things go wrong? Things go wrong as soon as you start talking about the Higgs and the vacuum. The vacuum, according to the standard theory, has a lot of Higgs in it. I'll discuss that in a second. But things go wrong. In particular, there is this thing called the cosmological constant that no one understood. That is the link between Higgs and gravitation. I think that gravitation is deeply in trouble already, both theoretically and experimentally, even if the astrophysicists seem to succeed in smearing out the problems like suction effects. Things like dark matter and dark energy. And there are a lot of other things. There's a list of 8 or 10 of such things. Are hard to understand with our present ideas of gravity. So history, I won't go into that anymore. And so I want to go now to the next step and discuss explicitly some of the algebra that goes with the vacuum so that you understand what's going on. And the point that I want to make in this section here, that is you can formulate a theory in different ways and always get the same answer. And this concerning the vacuum. And for this I take a model. This model is the Lagrangian that you see there. It consists of a particle of mass m, and it has only one interaction. It has 2 interactions. It has a 3-point interaction. There is a vertex. So it interacts with itself. And then it has a funny interaction called the dipole, meaning that you could say it interacts with the vacuum. You can have such a particle going and whoop, it ceases to exist. This is possible if its energy and momentum is 0. And that may normally not be the case, but if it can occur as part of a diagram, as we will see, then it can happen. And then this dipole contributes. I'll show you how this dipole can be got rid of, since it's sort of a bad thing to understand, but you get something in return. So what we will find here is how something relates to the vacuum leads to a difference in mass. Now here, let's first see what the dipole does. Then you have a diagram, like you see there, the big D. It is how can a particle disappear into nothingness? It can happen in various ways. It can happen because there is such a basic interaction, but it can also be because it first splits in two and each of them stops, or you can get that, etc., etc. So once you start with one such thing here, and once you have this interaction, you get this whole set to redefine what goes in the vacuum. Now, I think I'm skipping a point, but I don't want to skip it. Let me go back for a minute. Let me go back for a minute to give you some understanding of what may go on in the vacuum. As an example that helps me sometimes in understanding this is the following. All of you know, of course, about electromagnetism and waves and radar waves and microwaves and stuff like that. And you know that they exist by means of cavities. The cavity is the microwave version of a resonant circuit. I hope you have met this already sometime in your education. But so you have these cavities, and they are used like resonant circuits whenever you're dealing with very, very short wave electromagnetic radiation. Yeah? So here's a cavity, you go to CERN, where they accelerate things with very high energy radio waves. You will see CERN is full of cavities, which are precisely tuned to a certain frequency. Now, I'm not proposing that you think a moment about such a cavity and make a funny assumption, a wrong assumption, but just to get the idea. Here you have this cavity, and normally when it works, currents run around through the surface of the cavity, and inside the cavity you have an electromagnetic field of the frequency in question. Okay, that's how a cavity more or less works, very roughly speaking. Now, so it is a configuration in which you have the electrons going around, and there's the field in the cavity, and it interacts with the electrons around and makes sort of a resonance, a bound state, you could say. Yeah. Imagine that the binding energy of that system was less than zero. It is not like that, but just imagine for a moment a thing like that. How would that be? Well, you would have in a workshop, someone would be making a cavity, and at the moment the cavity is finished, that solution will go sit in the cavity because it's lower energy than zero, and so it would go sit there. So all cavities would have such an electromagnetic field in them and currents going around. And at the same time energy would be released, so the cavity would become hot the moment you are ready. Okay, it's a crazy idea, but that's sort of what you can think of when you think of a vacuum. That is not a state in which you have nothing at all. You would have a field in that. If you look in the cavity, there's a field. It would be the vacuum field. And well, that could be. Now with electromagnetism that doesn't help, because the resonance that you make with such a field and the currents in the cavity is not, that energy is not big enough to go below zero, the binding energy. But in nature you can have it. Yeah. You could imagine, for example, that there is this particle, this Higgs particle, it couples to itself, and it happens that there is a configuration of the Higgs where it interacts with itself and which energy is less than zero. Well, if that's the case, you can see when the universe gets into being, it will go in that lower state. Yeah. Now you could even make crazier ideas that at the same time a lot of energy gets generated. And that's how stars and stuff, but that's not the case. I mean, that's a crazy fantasy which I forbid you to make, because the total energy of the universe is known to be roughly zero. Okay, so that's the way you have to understand spontaneous sympathy breakdown, or that's to say, a situation where there is a field in the vacuum. You can have a field in the vacuum if it has interaction somehow that it is less than zero. Does that field have to be a scalar field? The answer is it does not have to be a scalar field. You could also have an electromagnetic field, which has a vector field like electromagnetism, which has an interaction with itself, and then could create a field in the vacuum which which is there. This is sort of an interesting thing. You can speculate that way. If there would perhaps exist in the galaxy somewhere places where there would be a vector field, it would, as an immediate consequence, if that happens, that the vacuum would not be rotation invariant anymore, because a vector field has a direction. And it means that if you have a vacuum in which there is such a vector field, it will have a direction. So if you want to believe in that kind of things, you have to ask the first question from the astronomers and say, is the universe symmetric? When I look around, does it have an axis or is it spherical? Now in actual fact it has an axis. That has recently been found out. But even so, I think most of us don't believe that there is a direction to the universe which could relate to a field in there. You can do other things with that. But I won't go on to that path. You can even make it a model of a quasar, a field like that, and you get very interesting results. But since there is no way to check those things, I don't think there's any point in pursuing it. But now I'm going on. Now we are going to a Higgs. A Higgs particle is a scalar. It means there's no direction associated with it. Therefore, if it isn't a vacuum, you're not going to see it so easily. So that's property number one. So there's a reason why the Higgs particle we talk about is a spinless particle. There's no direction associated with it. Yes?
What if this is scalar? It's actually some kind
You
of
have to speak loud to me. You must translate for me. What does he ask?
I'm not sure.
What if the scalar field is some kind of condensate of all the things? Maybe a blue hole. You were talking about H field.
Well, I remember just coming down the staircase with Park, we were discussing whether such a scalar field could be the sigma field for the protons that gives the proton a mass. Yeah, that's possible. So it doesn't have to be an elementary particle. Any scalar field with self-interaction, even if it is a composite thing, could result in a bound state that has energy less than zero. Yes?
Do you think
Any
we
more
will find out
questions? Yes?
at LHC? Do you think we will find out at LHC?
I'm not sure. You know, this stuff is funny. You think you know it, and then you get another situation and it doesn't make sense. That has also happened with the sigma model for giving mass to the proton. You think you understand it, then you discover that the proton is made up of quarks, you get another picture of the thing, and you don't know anymore what to believe. It is a different situation. In any case, so far the belief that we have, let me put it differently, it's not the belief that we have, this is a workable model which does everything you want it to do. So using a Higgs particle, we can make a nice normalizable model, a standard model, in which all calculations that we do can be performed, and we get finite numbers or more. They agree very nicely with the experiment. There's only one big disadvantage to the standard model. It has too many parameters. You have all the masses of the particles going all the way from the neutrino masses to the top mass, and they span an enormous region of 10 to I don't know how many. And no one knows where all these parameters come from, let alone that we understand why we can cover such a scale of orders of magnitude. It is a very unsatisfactory state of affairs. Nonetheless, we believe that those masses, today we think that those masses are generated by the Higgs sector somehow. So the hope is that by the time we start to understand the Higgs sector, we get some more insights in important questions like that. But there is no guarantee, and maybe when the machine starts running in Geneva, you will see the Higgs are all right, but get no clue as to what else is going on.
But what is your own belief? Do you think this?
My own belief?
I mean, regarding composite, do you think the Higgs, in case it exists, is a composite thing? It would be the first fundamental.
It depends on the day of the week. On Mondays, you see, it's like this. If you are a pessimist, the Higgs is there, and it is a particle of some 140 GeV, and it does all that it is required to do by the standard model. And if that is true, then I would say that's the end of particle physics. And that's sad. I don't want to believe that. On the other hand, I also think that sort of doesn't make sense. I think we should get some insights into as to why there are all these different masses. And on top of it, I see that the Higgs is somehow related to gravitation. And then I also see that gravitation is in all kinds of difficulties by the astrophysicists, except these people are very smart in covering up anything. So what can you do? With the astrophysicists, you never know what is true or what's not true, because you cannot do an experiment. That would be a difference. If we could do a nice experiment and precisely define whether there is or not dark matter or dark energy, which the newest fad. Think of it, these people, they are really out of their mind. 7 years ago, in the year 2000, we saw the universe as they painted it for us. Dark matter, particles, what have you. Yeah. Now, today, they tell me 70% of the universe is dark energy that I haven't ever heard of before 2000. In other words, these people are capable of 1 year to the next totally changing our concept of the universe. And then there's the famous words of Landau, yeah? You know that? No?
What?
The words of Landau. Landau, when he talked about astrophysicists, he says, often in error, never in doubt. So, the fact is that astronomy is a little bit of science like economy, not entirely fair, but like in economics you cannot do an experiment either, right? You cannot. I mean, you would have to make a small society enclosed and start doing things with it. Give them a Franco or a Joseph Stalin and see what happens. That you cannot do. And the same is with astrophysics. You cannot try another universe. Yeah? You are always bound by the fact all you can do is observe and hope to see something. And that is very different from the way it is in physics. And when gauge series came up, of course, first of all kinds of things started falling in place. So it fitted very nice with everything we knew. But then there were predictions. And there were measurements. For example, the top quark mass was predicted. And the thing was exactly there, was found there and where it was predicted. Now you have a situation like that, you believe in it. But astrophysics is no such science. Anyway, let me now go back here to this problem. I want to delve a little bit deeper in the matter of what you can have in the vacuum. And so I start with this vacuum. And I'm going to see what happens to the top pole diagram if I include hierarchies. So I get all these diagrams. And here's the wonderful thing that makes the whole situation solvable. The top equation can be rewritten as an equation with only 3 terms in that way. You see, if you plug in, if you make an iteration of this, the first iteration you have these 2, and so on. You iterate in here this solution of this equation. You reproduce this series. That's why this equation, equivalent to that, contains simply the same set of diagrams. Yeah. So that's very nice. It is a little bit, I don't know if you know that, it's good perhaps to understand that, where you have a geometric series, 1 over 1 minus r. I'm sure everyone knows that series.
Do you need a pointer?
No, I need a piece of chalk. I do have a pointer. I wonder if I was scared that I wouldn't have chalk in Spain. But on the other hand, you cannot see anything. Okay, you know this series. Now that series is the same as 1 plus r times what is the series. You see, if you plug this in here, you get the same thing back. So that's the same thing that I'm doing here. Yeah. And then you are set, because you see the series is 1 plus r, and then you find that the series is simply 1 over 1 minus r. So you can solve it that way. That's what you can do here too. So now you can solve it, and this is the result. AT, and these are the numbers that come from the value of this vertex, and the various numbers associated with these diagrams. So this, all these numbers here, it includes the coupling constant, the factor 6 over 2, which somehow comes around, and then of course t squared, I have it twice, and the factor g over L to the fourth, because there is 1 over m squared somewhere. It's because of this thing. At zero momentum, it's just 1 over m squared. Since I have two propagators, that is m to the fourth. So this is literally the same as this one here. And then you can solve and see that there are two solutions for t. That's interesting too. Two solutions for big T. It is equal to the solution of the quadratic equation. And now the solution with a plus sign makes no sense if you let the perturbation constant g go to 0. So you realize there's something wrong with one of the solutions. The other solution makes sense and goes continuously from something that can be expanded to powers of t. So let's start to investigate this solution. Now, once I've made a solution, I don't need to make the summation anymore, but I get something else. So consider the particle that is propagating, and then you can see that it can, this is again that 3 vertex, and then you can have this possibility. The particle propagates, exchanges something with the vacuum, and goes on. And this you can happen once, twice, 3 times, etc. This you can also sum. And it's a geometric series, so luck has it that I have to deal only with geometric series. And this is the final result. The sum of all these diagrams is equal to this, and I wish to remind you that this term here is what you get here, and you forgot to get this. So what you see that happens here is very quick and clean and not dirty at all. What happens here is you can see how such a top pole, the big T, just adds, effectively means the mass of the particle changes. It used to be m squared, now instead it becomes m squared minus 6gt over m squared. So the net result of that top pole is that the propagation of phi is no more a particle of mass little m, but is a particle with a modified mass. And this, therefore, you can see how such a particle that moves in the vacuum here, in that vacuum is that top pole, yeah, changes in mass. So what I'm showing here is a way of understanding the mass generation by means of such a particle. I want you to understand that very well, because this is not the only way of seeing it. So yeah, that's the result, there it is. Now, if this series, the question is whether that series converges or not. The answer that we have here makes perfectly good sense for any value of t. But since it is a geometric series that you have here, that series converges only if r is less than 1. So that's the thing you have to note. You have gotten a solution which is more true than the process that you went through. We went through it by summing up the series, and now the result is more true than the original theory. So we see that the mass changes due to the stop pole t. The mass goes over into mass squared and 6 gt over m squared. Now remember that we have two solutions for this t. There's two solutions. So then it means that the mass changes that way. And so now you can have You solve that equation there. You put a t. You put that solution of t in that equation there, and then you find that m squared, the mass, gets replaced by m to the fourth minus or plus the root of m to the fourth minus 12 ct. So this is totally stupid calculation. You take this thing, plug in this t, and that's what you get. Two solutions. Now, the lower sign makes sense. You can see if the coupling constant is small, you get a positive mass. But what about the upper sign? You're dealing with a particle with negative mass. What does that mean? Negative mass squared. Yeah. Now, so the upper solution makes a particle which has negative mass squared, and that is a particle which people have come to call a tachyon. A particle with negative mass is a particle that moves with a speed larger than that of light. It would be nice to do that, but it is actually not something that we can live with. I'll show you why we cannot live with it. Here, and you can see that a little bit nicer if you solve this problem slightly differently in the way that people usually do it. You write down again that Lagrange that we had, and it has a potential energy as given there. So it is very much that Lagrange is without the first term. That you call a kinetic energy. And 1/2 m squared phi squared plus c phi to the third plus t phi, that is what you call a potential. Now consider that potential as a function of the field. So another way of looking at it, only thing I want you to know is what I'm doing with my Feynman diagrams gives exactly the same as this. So if you wish, the procedure that we're now going through is something I could talk about for Feynman diagrams. So my Feynman diagrams are the same as the usual way of talking about it. The usual way of talking about it, you say this field phi, this potential is a potential which is quadratic, there's even a third power there. Yeah. And so it is a curve like you see here. Okay, so the potential for the field phi, potential energy you get as a function of the field phi, looks like this. It has two extrema, which are the two solutions, big T. And now the two extrema are the two crosses there. The one that has a normal mass and corresponds to a particle that you can have, and that's a stable situation. You sit precisely at the value of potential energy. The other one, the tachyon, is a solution which will run away, which will fall off the potential that will result in the disaster. I'll show you explicitly how this disaster works out. Any questions?
Okay, so in the summation of the diagrams, the first diagrams, there were some diagrams that we didn't solve in the
To my knowledge, we subject to a lot.
Aren't there loop diagrams in that summation?
What?
Aren't there loop diagrams?
No loop diagrams. No loop diagrams.
Some
So the loops come on top of this, but you see, the loop is just going to be an addition, a correction onto the simple thing. Now we have written the vertex as a point. As soon as I started writing loops, that will be the vertex will be a point plus a contribution due to a loop. But it's not included, so we are not studying it, and I'm not going to discuss it at this point. But the discussion at this point doesn't need quantum correction. Loop correction are always quantum correction. They don't substantially change things. So you can actually deal with the theory in another manner. I always deal with the same simple theory in different manners. So I go back to the theory that we are having here and make a shift. So we shift, phi goes to phi plus c plus minus, where c plus minus are the two solutions that we have for phi at an extreme. Yeah. Then the potential energy becomes like you see here. And what happens is the linear term has disappeared. In this way you can see how changing the mass makes you get rid of this term. There's no linear term anymore. On the other hand, I get an extra term lambda, some constant. That's an important term, so it's there. So, in any case, my top pole has disappeared. And there's another way of showing that this top pole that we had in the beginning is equivalent to just changing the mass. And this is a somewhat easier way of seeing it. Now the question is, are tachyons physically acceptable particles? So that's where it is in particles, so we will discuss that. The tachyon is an animal of negative mass square. That means to say, you know, the mass of a particle is the x component of the momentum square plus the y component of the momentum square. And it can be represented by a dot on that thing there. The tachyon is a particle whose energy is less than the mass, than the momentum of the particle squared. So this diagram you see here is the one that you usually draw when you discuss Lorentz invariants and things like that. For any given particle, you plot the energy along this axis and the momentum of the particle. Well, it's in fact three-dimensional, but you represent it by only one momentum. So that's the momentum of the particle. And then for a tachyon, E squared plus P squared becomes something that lies on the curve, as I've shown there. Now, you see the energy momentum relation for a tachyon is mass squared minus m squared is that E squared is P squared minus m squared, not plus m squared. So that's these 2 points that I've given there. For a given P you find 2 energies. Or for a given energy you find 2. Well, yeah. So now you do a Lorentz transformation. So here I have a tachyon, which is a particle with a certain momentum and a certain energy, represented by these 2 points here. It can be either one, so there's a tachyon. It has this energy, it has this momentum. Now we do a Lorentz transformation. Now a Lorentz transformation is something for which the relation between E squared and P squared doesn't get changed. In other words, you see that these 2 lines, any point on any one of the lines will, by a Lorentz transformation, move into another point on that same line. Normally, when you take a physical particle, it's usually represented by a curve like that, there, in the top there. And so you go to higher momentum, the energy goes up, and you go very high momentum, the energy goes up again. But you stay on that curve. Here, you also stay on that curve. That's the Lorentz invariance curve. And now I see something funny happening. I can, by means of a Lorentz transformation, move that point, that bubble that you see there, anywhere along the curve. So I can even move it into becoming a particle with negative energy. I can move it below the line by some suitable Lorentz transformation. With tachyons, therefore, it's unavoidable that you get particles of negative energy. Now, if there exist particles of negative energy, you are in deep trouble. Because if you exist, the only thing in general when you have physics going on in some process, one law is that energy should be conserved. But if I can make particles of negative energy and positive energy, I can create particles out of nothing. So the elegant way of saying this, you say the vacuum becomes unstable. If there exist tachyons, then the vacuum can decay into pairs of tachyons. One is negative energy and one is positive energy. And so that's physically how it happens that you fall off a mountain. It's an unstable situation. Certainly doesn't go according to the physics that we know. Okay, so that's a tachyon. I have to worry that my pants don't fall over. You wouldn't care.
I think I can.
Huh?
I can
Is that so? Okay, now comes the matter of the cosmological constant. The theory of gravitation of Einstein is a quantum field theory that takes massless particles of spin 2. We think that the gravitational field is particles of spin 2. And now particles of spin 1 and spin 2 are just general things here, and slowly come to the point. Particles of spin 1 or spin 2 do have degrees of freedom that they have a problem with. Because, for example, if you have a spin 1 particle, such as electromagnetism, can have spin up or spin down, and also this spin in a certain direction. For a particle of mass 0, that state of spin is unphysical. And I won't go into it, because that carries me off at a long distance. But in any case, such a particle cannot be admitted. And since you cannot avoid it, because a particle of spin this way can be gotten by a rotation out of this one, by a Lorentz transformation, therefore, it means that this one exists, so does this one, and that one. All I have to do, however, is to make sure that this one doesn't couple it. You cannot make it. Yeah. And that's what we do. So for spin 1 or spin 2 particles, which necessarily appear as 3 degrees of freedom, you have to include a principle that forbids the occurrence of one of the degrees of freedom. So you need a symmetry that tells you you will make the with the spin up or the spin down for a photon, and the same for the graviton, but not with any other spin direction. And this such a situation you can achieve only by imposing a symmetry that guarantees that you will never, in the process, produce such a particle. And for the case of electromagnetism, that's by means of gauge invariance. And I assume, maybe wrongly so, but I assume that at least once in your life you have heard about it. You make photons of spin up or spin down, or in better state, you make photons that have to spin along their direction of motion or against their direction of motion. But you cannot make photons that have a spin that's not either of the two. But it's very important, because if you formulate a theory, the other photons, the funny photons, would have wrong properties. They would have negative probability and so on. You cannot have them in the theory. But that's possible. So if you make sure that your interaction between the photons and the world of particle and charge is always such that you will never produce such a particle, then you are in business. You must have it. The interactions have to be such that you don't make such particles. This also holds for gravity. The situation is actually quite more complicated. For gravity, you must make your gravitation, you have to constrain it such that it produces only gravitons where the spin goes along the direction of motion or against the direction of motion. For the simple reason that any other spin, you get gravitons with unphysical properties, such as negative probabilities. We cannot handle negative probabilities. Quantum mechanics is a science that requires probabilities to be positive. A negative probability doesn't make sense. What does it mean? A negative probability that I am here. It's nothing. It means I'm not here, or I'm here, or my reflection is here.
There are two things here. There are two of you here.
Huh?
There are two of you here.
There are two of me here. Hey, how are you? Okay, so we have this problem that we cannot allow this. We must have a symmetry. And for gravitation, that's also made by means of an invariance, which in time has gotten different names. That is the principle of equivalence that you may have heard for gravitation. So let's go a little bit more into details of this thing. What happens when you have a non-abelian gauge symmetry? And when you have a non-abelian gauge symmetry that is not electromagnetism, because that's abelian, it has only one photon, but we have series with more levels of things like quantum chromodynamics or the weak interaction, things like that. Then you get a curious fact. All these vector bosons, or the gluons, they couple to other particles. And they couple with a certain strength. And also the graviton couples with a certain strength to particles with a certain mass. Now what you see in this type of series is that the principle, that you have there, the symmetry principle, forces those coupling constants to be the same. And that was the principle of equivalence of Einstein, and that there's only one coupling constant for gravitation. And it's not so that you have two people who are otherwise the same, but one is more attracted than the other. They are attracted in the same way. Everyone always the same. That's a property of gravitation, a remarkable property, except you have to know it to realize that it is remarkable. And it has narrowly, it has very strongly to do with the invariance and the general coordinate transformation, the principle of equivalence. It's Einstein's principle of equivalence. So, in general, this type of symmetry leads to identical coupling constants for different situations, for different particles. Now, how do you couple? I'm now going to drag in gravitation, the simple model that we have. So we have a Lagrangian there. From Einstein's theory evolves the unique way of building the coupling of that phi particle to gravitation. And that is due to this principle of equivalence that allows me really no freedom in building up my interaction between gravitons and this particle. And here's the principle. And if you don't know it, that's just too bad. Yeah, too bad, guys.
The point there,
It's drugs.
it's working.
Except you should take the green one, which is much better. So this Lagrangian that you saw a minute ago, except there's big du here. We have made a shift to the top pole has disappeared because it's constant lambda. And this lambda actually I can work out, it's equal to this. It's just simply the previous thing. And there's the square root of thing called depth. But there's a prescription that follows for gravitation from the principle of equivalence. I have no freedom there. And if you wish, it comes from the idea, if I have here a particle, something or other, and it decays into two phi particles, then the coupling of this original particle to gravitation must be the same as the sum of these two. In other words, you cannot use a graviton to distinguish between particles. It's a universal way of coupling. And this universal way of coupling is like this. You cannot avoid it. Well, there are certain things you can do, but let me not make things confusing. So this coupling to gravitation, and that is the determinant of the tensor of gravitation. Now gravitation, as you know, is described by a tensor field. The field is two indices. It's G mu. This the way you write it normally. It's the Kronecker tensor, that's just the one, plus kappa, the coupling constant of gravitation, times what's called the gravitational field. So H mu u is the gravitational field. It's a generalization of A mu, that's the form potential for the photon field. Here's a little bit more complicated, there are two indices. But other than that, it's sort of quite a lot, like what you have electromagnetism, there you have also a big d mu. And you don't need to go into details what it is, the important thing is this determinant. And the reason that this is important is because this determinant here makes this lambda relevant. This constant lambda that came about by that shift, there it is. And there's this factor determinant in front of it. And as we can see immediately, if we take this determinant and we plug in this equation and work only to lowest order, it's very easy to work out that determinant. It is in fact this 1 plus kappa 2 times the trace of the gravitational field. And then something horrible happens, because if this determinant has a linear term here, and these lambda here produces this term, and that's the gravitational dipole term. That is like a graviton can go in the vacuum and stop existing. It's sort of if you couple the graviton to the vacuum. That's precisely what happens. So we see here a very thing, namely creating, as we did, looking to a theory that created this tadpole thing. It led to a shift in the particle, in mass, but it didn't do anything else. But now we see it does something in gravitation. It leads to a cosmological constant. This lambda is called a cosmological constant. And the question is it visible? Can you see it? Would we see it if the graviton would feel that there was something in the vacuum? Well, of course you would see it. If there's a lot of stuff in the vacuum to which the graviton couples, well, you will see it as coupling of gravitation to that. And if you are moving through that vacuum, you would feel it. All that stuff in the vacuum would pull by the forces of gravity. Would pull whatever you have. Now the point is, in Einstein's theory of gravitation, the gravitational field leads to a curvature of space. In general can be understood. The movement of a particle through space affected by gravitation. That's good like this. Einstein's concept of the theory, it moves as a straight line in a curved space. Whether it's the curved line in a flat space, or a curved line in a curved space, or a straight line in a curved space, or the same thing. But that was Einstein's philosophy, and generally people believe it is, and it's one way of describing it. However, the curvature, if I now have this lambda here, the question is, given a certain amount of lambda, what kind of curvature does that give for the universe? Because that's what it does, it gives the curvature of the universe. So this lambda is what we call a cosmological term, and in general it leads to the fact that without any particle being around, just the fact that this lambda came out of the shift, there is something sitting in a vacuum, so to say. Yeah. Due to this fact, the universe curves. And here I see how it happens. And it curves in an amount that's totally determined by this lambda. The question is, how big is this lambda? Now, that becomes a question of what model you're talking about. This was just a model that I brought up to show you the mechanism. But we have no idea of what lambda is, or could be. But when we talk about the standard model and weak interactions, it's another story. Because there we have also a field generating masses for particles, not only for itself, but also for other particles. And we know in fact quite precisely what that lambda is going to be. So that lambda that you get in that case can be computed. And what do we get out? We get the curvature of the universe equal to the curvature of the universe where as big as this. This I might say is contrary to experiment. The universe is definitely bigger than this. Yeah. In fact, I remember giving a talk at CERN, and there were all these big shots of all these countries sitting there. And there was also the delegate of Switzerland. So I say to him, it would even be smaller than Switzerland. And he got a little bit angry about it. Yes?
100%. Of course, you have expanded the metric around flat space. If you would have done this around the zero space,
and it becomes sort of a nonsensical question, you want to say.
You have an extra contribution coming from that determinant.
But you know, I don't have to expand it. Yeah. I don't have to expand it to nonetheless have a cosmological term and get a solution of free space.
But not from the typo.
I mean, that's what I'm doing here. Yeah. But I could wipe out everything else just to look to lambda times the square root of the determinant and determining what that was.
So what I mean, instead of a 1, you'd have something else. The square root of the determinant, if you have a de Sitter space as a background.
I'm happy to argue with you about it, but I don't think it's very relevant at this point. Yeah. Whether the fact that I have expanded linearly corresponds not to the situation I'm picturing. Yeah. All I'm saying is the cosmological constant that we are finding is way out of any normal proportion. You will have peace with that. Yeah.
True, but it has
a little bit of peace. Yeah. Well, what he says is that if I'm there expanding CU into delta to scapula H mean U, and then start talking about this solution where this whole universe is like a ball here, that's not perturbative, and you shouldn't be able to make that expansion. And I guess he's right, but I don't think that changes in any way the essence of the argument. So what we see, whether the cosmological constant is big or small or whatever, the fact is that when you ask cosmologists about this cosmological constant, something which gives a residual curvature of the universe independent of whatever stuff is floating in it. There are ways of getting at it, and they have been able to get at it recently by various experiments. The experiments relate to what you have. You observe things which are a remnant of the Big Bang. If you do that, it tells you some of the history, and it tells you something of the flatness of space that stuff has been traveling through. That's what, in fact, the Nobel Prize of 2 years ago was given to the observation of the Kobe satellite and other satellites on background radiation, and concluding from that statements of the magnitude of cosmological constant, the flatness of space. And space is really very flat.
Okay. Did you say those were not experiments, or those are included into the experiments?
Excuse me?
You said before that those were not experiments, so do you believe in the results?
Of the Kobe
you were claiming before that all these astrophysical experiments, cosmological experiments, were not such. So.
No, we could really talk a lot. I ran into this guy, Smoot is the name of the man, who has been one of the 2 people who got the prize for this Kobe satellite. And this guy is the extreme model of an astrophysicist. He has written a piece in which it says, this is the most, no he didn't, there's this guy, what's his name, Hawkins, Hawkins, he described the work of Kobe satellite, and he said, this is the most important thing that happens in the last 100 years, if not of all time. I found that such a ridiculous statement. They measure there the flatness of the universe, there's interpretation around and what have you. And is this more important than the discovery of the laws of Maxwell, of Newton, of relativity, what have you? What kind of bullshit is that? Yeah? So these people talk in those terms. Yeah? And then Mr. Smoot cited Hawkins, and then he said, yes, it's wonderful, we see here the makings of God, it's godlike. This was incredible. So the other guy who got the prize got so mad at Smoot that they now don't talk to each other anymore. But I would say, as far as I'm concerned, I'm happy to conclude that this is a measurement of the flatness of the universe. Yeah. And so let's say that the universe seems to be very flat. How flat is actually a difficult question. Because now I've done another experiment. Whenever the astrophysicists do an experiment, it overthrows whatever they had before and you get something new coming in. The other experiment is an observation of distant novas by a guy by the name of, what's his name?
Perlmutter.
Perlmutter. Yes, second. Mr. Perlmutter. A very smart thing, and he had some collaboration set up that would observe all these. He's a good man. When you read his paper, it makes sense. What they see is that these particles, these novas, which are far off at the outer edges of the universe, instead of deaccelerating, they are accelerating. They seem to want to go away faster, more faster all the time. And you cannot understand that. So just like that. And this has led to this concept of dark energy. So it's another one of these things, one new experiment, they don't understand it, there comes in another new thing that nobody understands either. This dark energy is very funny stuff, because you cannot make it with particles. You can make it at least something like it for a fixed relation between energy and momentum. You can make it by the cosmological constant. So you can also, at least to some extent, create it by believing in a cosmological constant. So the first thing that I asked to Mr. Smoot, who, as we all know, has a direct telephone line to God, I asked him, if this this cosmological constant coming from this experiment of Mr. Perlmutter, whether it was conflicting with the one that he got the Nobel Prize for. And apparently he hadn't thought about it. And there fell a painful silence. And then he said, I think not. All I can do is repeat it. He thinks not. I think there is, I seem to believe that there is no direct contradiction there, but I just don't understand it very well. I'm confused by it. So I encourage you. You can read an article if you want to know the way. Go read Mr. Perlmutter's experiment, which was published in an issue like about 2 years ago in Physics Today. It's very readable. Yeah, so if you want to know more about that, go there. The cosmological constant is really, it's a funny thing. It has been the plague of theory for a long time. The first time that it came up as a consequence of the standard model or something that I did way back in 72 or so, or 73. And it has never gone away. It's still a problem. I may also tell you another anecdote about that. In hindsight, it was probably one of my more important papers, and therefore it got, of course, refused for publication. Because that's the way it goes. So if you look for a paper, well, it gets complicated. No. So there we are now, and we have this cosmological constant, and the observed value in any case is very close or equal to 0. While if you believe the standard model, it's very big. Now I should add another statement here, which goes for a number of other problems that we have with standard model. You can eliminate this problem by assuming, can you imagine the Lagrangian we had in the beginning? Here, that Lagrangian. I add the term minus some constant times lambda, and I fix that constant so that the net result of what this is generated together with what we have there becomes 0. In other words, I do not know what the cosmological constant was at the moment that God created the universe. And the universe, by its creation, produces an addition to the cosmological constant. But since we don't know what the value was beforehand, we were not there, yeah, nobody was there, I can always assume that it was in such a way that the final result is flat. That is the normal, otherwise put, I cannot draw hard conclusions because it is a fact that I cannot say rigorously there's a contradiction here because I don't know the initial value. The only thing I know is that if the good Lord was doing this, he had to be accurate, like in some 25 decimals, because this thing also gets radiative correction and correction and correction. And he would have to foresee all of that in the counter term that he made. Well, maybe he did it, God is very smart, as we all know. So this is a difficult situation. You cannot produce a flat-out contradiction. It's just that the order of magnitude, the way it goes, it seems so artificial. It's like a comparison that I may give to you. Imagine that we have a game of football between Real Madrid and Barcelona. And you start playing football, but I first very carefully measured the location of the football. Now then they start playing football like mad. Yeah. They get a couple of Dutchmen in addition. Yeah. Right? So they play football all the time, and at the end, after 90 minutes or all, it finishes. And by accident, the ball is again in the middle. And not only that, it's there with a precision of 1 in 10 to the 36 or something, or whatever the number is. It just doesn't make sense. But yet no one has an alternative explanation to that. So we are sitting with a problem that the cosmological constant seems to be very small. And on the other hand, the theory, the standard model, produces values for the cosmological constant which are totally outrageous. So the cosmological constant is really a big problem. Now there's another solution that sometimes is produced, is stated, and that it goes like follows. Can you imagine? That's the way that I remember thinking about it the first time that I was confronted with cosmological concept. Think of the universe being like a big bomb that explodes. You would say an explosion is by its very nature such that the resulting stuff is flat. Can you imagine? Because it tries to fill the biggest space. So an explosion will always try to make flat space because that's the biggest. If it was curved, it would just explode it apart. That was sort of an infantile way of looking at it. So I thought it was so ridiculous that I never wrote it down. But the idea has come back and it's called inflation. Under the model of inflation, which to this day I don't understand very well, we start with some universe and it sort of becomes automatically flat after the Big Bang, after a period of very rapid expansion. I do not know if that's true or not, so I just don't know. I don't want to discuss it. You see, the factors that we're talking about are 10 to the 55th. It is something. So that's the problem of cosmological concepts. Now I would like to discuss the other time. This will be tomorrow. Tomorrow I will start discussing this the original Higgs model. Mr. Higgs has produced the first model of this situation. We will discuss what's going on and then discuss some issues that will come back in the standard model. Unitarity limit, the equivalence theorem, and will give us a hold of certain issues. So thank you very much for your attention. Is there any questions?
Young people or not so young, do you have any question? Questions are welcome.
How old are you?
It's about
How old are you?
How old are you?
I will answer more if you're young.